The massive alien ship moved through space like a giant crystal knife. Admiral Korath stood on the bridge, his tall blue body covered in shining scales. His 4 eyes looked down at the small blue planet below. The humans called it Earth. Another weak world, Korath said to his officer. His voice sounded like breaking glass. These humans have not even learned to travel between stars properly. They still use chemical rockets like children playing with fire. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled space for 3,000 years. Their crystal ships were the most feared weapons in the galaxy. Each ship could turn entire planets into glass with their energy weapons. They had destroyed countless worlds and enslaved millions of beings. But Earth was different. The Zephyrian scouts had sent reports that worried the Empire. These humans were not just another peaceful race to conquer. They fought each other constantly. Their history was filled with terrible wars. They had weapons that could destroy their own planet many times over. "Admiral," said his tactical officer, "the humans have detected our presence. They are sending radio signals." Korath laughed, a sound like crystals breaking. "Let them talk. Soon they will have nothing to say." On Earth, Captain Jake Morrison was flying his patrol ship near Mars. The United Earth Space Force had sent him to check for asteroid threats. It was supposed to be a boring mission. Jake was thinking about his wife and 2 kids back on Earth when his radar screen lit up like a Christmas tree. "What the hell?" Jake said, staring at the massive shape that had just appeared on his screen. The ship was 3 times bigger than anything humans had ever built. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, made of some kind of crystal that seemed to bend light around it. Jake tried to radio Earth, but before he could speak, the alien ship fired. A beam of pure energy hit his ship. Jake watched his shields fail in seconds. The hull began to melt around him. "Mayday, mayday." Jake screamed into his radio. "Unknown hostile ship attacking. It's huge, it's..." The beam cut through his ship like butter. Jake Morrison and his crew of 200 people died in silence. Their atoms scattered across space. The alien attack began at exactly noon, Earth time. 12 cities around the world were hit at the same moment. New York disappeared in a flash of light that could be seen from orbit. London became a crater filled with melted glass. Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, Sydney, Mumbai, Cairo, Berlin, Paris, Rio de Janeiro, and Los Angeles all died in the first minute. President Helen Carter was in Washington when the attack started. She was in a meeting about farm subsidies when her security chief burst through the door. "Madam President, we need to get you to the bunker now," he said, grabbing her arm. "What's happening?" Helen asked as alarms began screaming throughout the White House. "We're under attack. 12 cities are gone." "It's not human technology." They ran through the halls as the building shook around them. Outside, people were screaming and running in every direction. Cars crashed into each other as drivers looked up at the sky in terror. Above Washington, a massive crystal ship hung. In the air, like a sword about to fall, the underground bunker was deep beneath the White House. It had been built to survive nuclear war, but Helen wondered if it could survive whatever was happening above. General Paul Rodriguez was already there with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. His face was pale and covered in sweat. "Madam President," he said, "we've lost 50 million people in the first attack, maybe more. We can't get accurate counts because the radiation is too high." Helen felt like she might throw up, but she forced herself to stay calm. "What do we know about the attackers?" "They're not from Earth. The ships are enormous, made of some kind of crystal material. Our weapons can't even scratch them. They have energy shields that stop everything we throw at them." A communication screen lit up in the bunker. An alien face appeared on it. Korath looked down at the humans with his 4 cold eyes. Humans of Earth. he said in perfect English. "I am Admiral Korath of the Zephyrian Empire. You have been judged and found wanting. Your species shows too much violence and chaos. You are a threat to the peace of the galaxy." Helen stepped forward. "We were not threatening anyone. We were living in peace on our own world." Korath's laugh was like breaking glass. "Peace? Your species has been at war with itself for thousands of years. You have weapons that could destroy your own planet. You are dangerous animals that must be controlled." "What do you want?" Helen asked. "Your complete surrender. Destroy all your weapons. Abandon your colonies on other worlds. Submit to Empire rule. You have 72 hours to comply. If you refuse, we will turn your entire planet into glass." The screen went dark. The bunker was silent, except for the sound of people breathing hard. General Rodriguez looked at his tablet. "Madam President, we have confirmed sightings of alien ships over every major city on Earth. They're just sitting there, waiting." Helen closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were hard as steel. "Get me Dr. Amy Collins, now." "Ma'am, Dr. Collins is working on classified projects. She might not be available." "I don't care if she's having tea with God himself. Get her here now. And bring all the files on Project Lazarus." 20 minutes later, Dr. Amy Collins walked into the bunker. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes. She had been working on secret government projects for 15 years. Most of them were too dangerous to ever use. "Madam President," she said quietly, "I assume this is about the aliens. Dr. Collins, I need to know if Project Lazarus is ready." Amy's face went white. "Ma'am, Lazarus is still experimental. We've only tested it on animals in computer simulations. The genetic modifications alone could kill the subjects. The psychological conditioning might drive them insane. We don't know what it would do to a human being." "Doctor," Helen said slowly, "in 72 hours, there might not be any human beings left to worry about. They've already killed 50 million of us in 1 hour. Our conventional weapons are useless against them. We need something they've never seen before." Amy looked around the room at the faces of the military leaders. They all looked desperate. "Madam President, Project Lazarus would create something that isn't quite human anymore. The subjects would be stronger, faster, and more intelligent than normal people. But they would also be programmed to be perfect killers. No fear, no mercy, no hesitation. They would be weapons in human form. How long would it take to create the first subject? If we skip all the safety protocols and use a volunteer who fits the genetic profile, maybe 6 hours. But the survival rate might be 0. The process essentially kills the subject and brings them back as something else." Helen looked at General Rodriguez. "Do we have volunteers?" Rodriguez nodded grimly. "Ma'am, after what happened today, we'll have more volunteers than we can use. A lot of our people lost everything in those attacks." Helen turned back to Dr. Collins. "Doctor, humanity tried being peaceful. It got us 50 million dead. Maybe it's time to try being something else." Amy nodded slowly. "I'll need a secure laboratory and a team of 20 specialists. And Madam President, once we start this, there's no going back. We'll be crossing a line that can never be uncrossed." "Dr. Collins," Helen said, looking up at the ceiling where somewhere above them, alien ships waited to destroy their world. "I think they already crossed that line for us." The countdown to humanity's transformation had begun. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb died at 3 in the morning. His heart stopped for 6 minutes and 12 seconds. Then Dr. Amy Collins brought him back to life. The secret laboratory was buried 2 miles under the Rocky Mountains. It had taken Dr. Collins and her team 18 hours to prepare everything for the first Lazarus procedure. Marcus lay on a metal table, Tubes and wires connected to every part of his body. Machines beeped and hummed around him as they rebuilt him from the inside out. "His vital signs are flatlined," said Dr. Roberts, Colin's assistant. "Should we try to restart his heart?" "No," Collins said, watching the computer screens carefully. "This is supposed to happen. The nanobots are replacing his blood right now. His old circulatory system has to die before the new one can take over." Marcus had volunteered for the procedure after losing his entire family in the New York attack. His wife Sarah and his twin daughters had been visiting the Statue of Liberty when the aliens turned the city into glass. Marcus had nothing left to lose and everything to gain from becoming something that could fight back. The nanobots in his bloodstream were tiny robots smaller than cells. They ate his old muscle tissue and replaced it with synthetic fibers that were 10 times stronger. They dissolved his bones and rebuilt them with carbon-titanium composites that could stop bullets. They rewired his brain with quantum processors that could think faster than any computer. But the scariest changes were the ones Dr. Collins couldn't see on her machines. The psychological modifications were rewriting Marcus's personality. The part of his brain that felt fear was being shut down. The part that felt mercy toward enemies was being removed completely. The part that hesitated before killing was being deleted. "Brain activity is spiking," Dr. Roberts said nervously. "His neural patterns don't look human anymore." "They're not supposed to," Collins replied. "We're not trying to make a better human. We're trying to make a perfect weapon." On the 6th minute, Marcus's eyes opened. But they weren't the same eyes that had closed. They glowed slightly in the dark, like a cat's eyes. When he sat up on the table, he moved with perfect balance and control. Every motion was precise and deadly. "How do you feel?" Dr. Collins asked. Marcus tilted his head, considering the question. His voice was the same, but there was something cold in it now. "I feel nothing. No pain, no fear, no doubt. I remember my family dying, but it doesn't hurt anymore. It just makes me angry. Very angry. Can you stand?" Marcus stood up from the table in one smooth motion. He didn't stumble or sway like someone who had been unconscious. He moved like a predator testing its muscles. "My body feels different, stronger. I can hear your heartbeat. I can smell your sweat. I can see heat patterns coming from your body." Dr. Collins made notes on her tablet. "The enhanced senses are working perfectly. How's your memory?" "Everything is clearer now. I remember every alien ship I saw on the news. Every face of every Zephyrian soldier. When I find them, I will know exactly how to kill them." Marcus looked at his hands. His fingernails had been replaced with retractable claws made of the same material as his bones. "When do I start hunting?" 3 days later, Marcus received his first mission. The aliens had built a supply base on Ganymede, one of Jupiter's moons. They thought it was safe behind their lines. They were wrong. Marcus traveled to the base in a small stealth ship. But he didn't need the ship to survive in space. His modified body could handle vacuum, radiation, and extreme cold. When he reached Ganymede, he left the ship and flew through space using tiny thrusters built into his suit. The alien base was a large dome made of the same crystal material as their ships. Inside, 300 Zephyrian soldiers were unloading supplies and maintaining their equipment. They had no idea that death was coming for them. Marcus landed on the dome silently. His claws cut through the crystal like it was paper. He dropped into the base and began his work. The first alien never saw him coming. Marcus moved faster than Zephyrian eyes could follow. His claws went through the alien's throat before it could make a sound. The second alien turned around just in time to see its partner fall. Marcus was already moving to the next target. The Zephyrians were good soldiers. They had conquered hundreds of worlds. But they had never fought anything like Marcus. He moved through their base like a nightmare made real. Their energy weapons couldn't hit something that moved so fast. When they did hit him, the beams bounced off his enhanced skin like sunlight off water. Marcus didn't just kill them. He studied them. As he fought, every wound he made taught him something new about Sci-Fi anatomy. Every scream told him about their psychology. By the time he finished, he knew exactly where to strike to cause maximum pain, maximum fear. The last alien to die was the base commander. Marcus found him hiding in the communications room, trying to send a distress signal. "Please," the alien said in its crystal voice, "we surrender. We will leave your system. We will never return." Marcus looked at the creature with his glowing eyes. "You came to my world. You killed my family. You made me into this thing. Now you get to see what humanity becomes when you push us too far." The alien died screaming. When Admiral Korath received the distress signal 12 hours later, he sent a full investigation team to Ganymede. What they found broke the minds of hardened soldiers who had seen countless battles. 300 Zephyrian soldiers were dead. They had been torn apart with bare hands. Their crystal exoskeletons were shattered, like glass. The walls were covered with alien blood that had been used to write human words. This is only the beginning. The security footage showed something impossible. A single human moving like lightning, shrugging off energy blasts that should have turned him to ash, killing with precision that made Zephyrian war machines look clumsy. "It cannot be real," Korath whispered, watching the footage for the 10th time. "Humans are weak, fragile, emotional. This is something else." His science officer, Vex, studied the readings with growing terror. "Admiral, the creature's cellular structure has been completely changed. Its brain patterns show no fear, no hesitation, no mercy. It has been designed to kill us." Korath felt something he had never experienced in his long life. Pure fear. How many more of these monsters do they have? On Earth, Dr. Collins was preparing the second batch of Lazarus subjects. 50 volunteers had stepped forward after hearing about Marcus's success. They were soldiers, police officers, firefighters, and ordinary citizens who had lost everything in the alien attack. Sergeant Lisa Kane stood at the front of the line. Her husband and 3 children had died in the Chicago bombing. She had nothing left but hatred for the aliens and a burning desire for revenge. "Dr. Collins," she said, "I understand that the process will change me, that I might not be human anymore when it's over." Collins nodded sadly. "The psychological modifications are extensive. You'll retain your memories and your basic personality, but your emotional responses will be different. You won't feel fear or doubt or mercy toward enemies." "Good," Lisa said firmly. "Humanity tried being human. It got us 50 million corpses and cities turned to glass. Maybe it's time to be something else, something that can make the aliens afraid for once." Dr. Collins looked at the faces of the other volunteers. They all had the same expression: cold, determination mixed with barely controlled rage. The aliens had created something they didn't understand when they attacked Earth. They had turned peaceful humans into weapons of revenge. "The process takes 6 hours per subject," Collins explained. "You'll die and come back as something new, something designed to hunt and kill our enemies. Are you sure you want this?" All 50 volunteers nodded at the same time. Collins sighed and activated the first medical table. "Then let's begin. God help us all." The second wave of humanities. Evolution was about to begin. Soon the aliens would learn that humans were most dangerous when they had nothing left to lose. 6 months after the first alien attack, Admiral Korath had lost 43 ships to creatures that his computers could not identify. The Zephyrians had stopped calling them humans. Now they called them the Plague. Captain Ryan Foster moved. through the corridors of the alien cruiser ZE's Dominator like a ghost. Behind him, 11 other Lazarus subjects followed in perfect silence. They had boarded the ship 3 hours ago by floating through space and cutting through the hull with their bare hands. The Zephyrian crew of 800 had no idea they were already dead. Ryan's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of alien voices from the bridge. His modified brain translated their crystal language instantly. The Lazarus process had given him the ability to understand any form of communication within seconds. "The human creatures are on the ship," one alien was saying. "We should abandon vessel and call for help. Where can we run?" Another replied, "They hunt us across the galaxy now. They appear from nowhere and kill everything that moves." Ryan smiled, though his face no longer looked completely human. The Lazarus modifications had changed his features, making them sharper and more predatory. His teeth were now designed for tearing flesh. His eyes glowed with an inner light that could see in complete darkness. "Lisa," he whispered into his communication device, "take your team to the engine room. Make sure nothing escapes." "Sergeant." Lisa Kane acknowledged the order without words. She had become the pack leader of the female Lazarus subjects. Her modifications were different from the males. Where Ryan was built for direct combat, Lisa was designed for stealth and psychological warfare. She moved through the ship's ventilation system like a serpent. Her body could compress and stretch in ways that defied human anatomy. Behind her, 5 other female subjects followed, their movements perfectly coordinated. The Zephyrians had learned to fear the male Lazarus subjects, but they were not prepared for what the females could do. Lisa and her team specialized in mating. Aliens disappear one by one, leaving behind only terror and confusion in the engine room. 12 Zephyrian technicians were trying to restore power to their escape pods. They worked frantically, their crystal hands shaking with fear. They had heard the stories from other ships. They knew what was coming. Lisa dropped from the ceiling like a spider. Her claws extended as she landed on the first technician. The alien's scream was cut short as Lisa's hand covered its mouth. The other technicians turned around just in time to see their colleague dragged into the shadows. Where did it go? One of them whispered in their crystal language. Lisa's voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. She had learned to throw her voice using the ship's own systems. "We are here. We are everywhere. We are what you made us." The technicians huddled together, their energy weapons pointed in all directions. But they were shooting at shadows. Lisa and her team had become one with the ship itself, moving through ducts and passages that the aliens had never known existed. One by one, the technicians disappeared. Their screams echoed through the ship, driving the remaining crew into panic. The Zephyrians began shooting at their own shadows, their disciplined military training breaking down under the psychological pressure. On the bridge, Ryan finally appeared. The alien officers spun around, their weapons ready. But Ryan just stood there, his glowing eyes fixed on the ship's captain. "Please," the captain said, his voice breaking like shattered glass. "We surrender. We will leave your space. We will never return." Ryan tilted his head, studying the alien like a scientist examining an interesting specimen. "Your species made a mistake. You thought we would fight like we used to. You thought we would follow rules and show mercy. But you changed the rules when you killed our families." "We were following orders," the captain pleaded. "The Empire commanded us to—" "I don't care about your orders," Ryan said quietly. "I care about making sure you never hurt another human being." The bridge erupted in violence. Ryan moved faster than the aliens could track, his claws cutting through their crystal armor like paper. But he didn't kill them all at once. He made sure each one lived long enough to see what happened to the others. Meanwhile, in secret laboratories, hidden across the solar system, Dr. Amy Collins was working on something that terrified even her. She had been studying captured Zephyrian technology and biology for months. Her research had led to discoveries that would change the war completely. Dr. Kevin Phillips, who had been a marine biologist before the invasion, now specialized in alien anatomy. His laboratory was filled with Zephyrian specimens in various stages of dissection. He had learned things about their species that even they didn't know about themselves. "Dr. Collins," he said, looking up from his latest experiment, "I think I've found their weakness. The Zephyrians are not just individuals. They're connected through quantum entanglement in their neural crystals. If we can find the right frequency, we can disrupt their entire communication network." Collins studied his data with interest. What kind of disruption? Complete psychological breakdown. Their minds are designed to work together. If we force them to experience isolation, they'll go insane within hours. How do we weaponize that? Phillips smiled grimly. We don't need to build a weapon. We need to modify our Lazarus subjects to broadcast the disruption frequency. Turn them into walking psychological warfare devices. Collins nodded slowly. Begin the modifications immediately. We'll test it on the next batch of subjects. In space, Lieutenant Commander Beth Martinez led a team of 6 Lazarus subjects who had been modified for deep space operations. They could survive in vacuum for weeks at a time, their bodies no longer needing air or food in the traditional sense. Beth's team had discovered a new way to hunt Zephyrian ships. Instead of attacking them directly, they would attach themselves to the hulls. Like parasites, they would slowly eat away at the ship's systems, causing critical failures that looked like accidents. The aliens had started calling them plague ships. Because vessels would suddenly go dark, their crews found days later torn apart by creatures that seemed to emerge from the ship's own walls. Beth's current target was a Zephyrian supply convoy carrying weapons to their forward bases. The 3 ships traveled in close formation, their shields overlapping for protection. But shields were designed to stop energy weapons and missiles, not creatures that could phase through solid matter. Beth and her team had learned to alter their molecular structure temporarily, allowing them to pass through ship hulls like ghosts. Once inside, they would return to solid form and begin their work. The first ship took 12 hours to die. The crew never saw their attackers, but they heard them moving through the walls, scratching and tearing at the ship's internal systems. By the time they realized what was happening, it was too late. Admiral Korath received reports of the convoy's destruction with growing desperation. His empire, which had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, was being torn apart by creatures that defied every law of physics and biology he knew. They're not fighting a war, he told his tactical officers. They're conducting an extermination. They don't want to defeat us. They want to erase us from existence. The Zephyrian High Command had begun to take notice. Messages arrived daily from the homeworld, demanding explanations for the massive losses. But Korath had no explanations to give. How could he explain that a species they had dismissed as primitive had evolved into something that hunted them like animals? "Admiral," his science officer Vex reported, "we have confirmed sightings of human creatures in 17 different star systems. They're not just defending their territory anymore. They're expanding." Korath felt his crystal heart sink. "How many ships have we lost this month?" 67 confirmed destroyed. 23 missing, presumed dead. And Admiral, the creatures are learning. Each attack is more sophisticated than the last. They're studying our technology, our tactics, our psychology. What do you recommend? Vex's answer chilled Korath to his core. Request immediate reinforcements from the core worlds. And sir, we need to consider the possibility that this war is already lost. On Earth, President Helen Carter stood in the rebuilt White House, looking out at the night sky. The stars looked different now. Knowing that humanity was spreading among them like a virus of revenge, Dr. Collins approached her with a report. Madam President, the third generation of Lazarus subjects is ready for deployment. These ones are different from the first two generations. How so? They don't need ships. They don't need weapons. They don't even need orders. They've been programmed with one single directive: find and eliminate all threats to humanity. They'll hunt across the galaxy until every alien that participated in the attack on Earth is dead. Carter nodded grimly. Release them. As the third-generation Lazarus subjects launched themselves into space, the galaxy began to understand the true scope of humanity's transformation. The aliens had awakened something that should have stayed sleeping. Now they would live with the consequences. The hunt was spreading to the stars. 10 months after the first alien attack, humanity made its next evolutionary leap. Dr. Amy Collins stood in her underground laboratory, looking at something that barely resembled a human being anymore. Commander Alex Stone had volunteered for the second-generation Lazarus process. But this was different from what Marcus Webb and the others had gone through. The first-generation subjects still remembered being human. They could still feel love for their own species, still think about protecting Earth and its people. Alex Stone remembered nothing of his past life. He had no family to mourn, no friends to miss, no emotions to hold him back. He was a weapon in human form, designed for one purpose only: the complete destruction of humanity's enemies. The psychological modifications are complete, Dr. Collins told President Carter over a secure video link. Subject Stone has no emotional attachments, no moral constraints, no capacity for mercy. He is essentially a machine programmed to eliminate threats. Carter watched Stone through the security cameras. He stood perfectly still in his cell, not moving for hours at a time. His eyes glowed brighter than the first-generation subjects. His body had been rebuilt with technology that the aliens had never seen before. What makes him different from the others? Carter asked. The first-generation subjects fight like enhanced humans. They're faster, stronger, and smarter, but they still think like people. Stone thinks like a natural disaster that has gained consciousness. He doesn't see individual enemies. He sees entire civilizations that need to be ended. Stone's first mission was to a Zephyrian colony world called Nexus Prime. 3 million aliens lived there in crystal cities that stretched across the planet's surface. It was heavily defended with orbital weapons and shield generators. No single ship could penetrate its defenses. But Stone didn't need a ship. He launched himself into space from a hidden base on Pluto. His modified body could survive anything the vacuum of space could throw at him. He could travel faster than light by folding space around himself, an ability that human scientists were still trying to understand. When Stone reached Nexus Prime, he didn't attack the defenses. He didn't try to fight the orbital stations. Instead, he landed on the planet's surface and began to study the ecosystem. The Zephyrians noticed him immediately. Thousands of soldiers surrounded the landing site, their energy weapons trained on the single human figure. But Stone just stood there, his glowing eyes scanning the landscape. "Surrender now, human creature," the base commander ordered through loudspeakers. "You are outnumbered 3 million to 1. Stone tilted his head, considering the number. Then he spoke, his voice carrying across the entire planet through hijacked communication systems. 3 million, he said quietly. That's more than died. In New York, but not enough to balance the scales. What happened next defied everything the Zephyrians knew about warfare. Stone didn't attack their cities or their armies. He attacked their world itself. He found the planet's main water treatment facility and introduced a virus he had created from his own modified cells. The virus didn't kill immediately. It spread through the water supply, then into the soil, then into the air. Within days, Every Zephyrian on the planet was infected. But Stone's virus wasn't designed to kill. It was designed to control. The infected aliens found themselves unable to reproduce. Their food supplies began to fail as the virus spread to their crops. Their technology started to malfunction as the infection spread to their biomechanical systems. The planet was dying slowly, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Stone walked through their cities as they crumbled around him. He didn't kill the aliens he met. He just watched them suffer as their world died beneath their feet. Within 3 weeks, Nexus Prime was a wasteland populated by the living dead. The surviving Zephyrians sent desperate messages to their fleet. It's not a warrior. It's entropy. It's death itself wearing a human face. Colonel Nancy Price, one of the first-generation Lazarus subjects, watched the reports from Nexus Prime with growing horror. She had been designed to be a perfect soldier, but she still retained her humanity. What she saw in Stone's methods terrified her. General Rodriguez, she reported during a briefing, the second-generation subjects aren't human anymore. They're something else. Something that thinks like a machine designed to end entire species. Rodriguez nodded grimly. Are they a threat to us? Not directly. They're programmed to protect humanity. But they don't understand concepts like mercy or proportion. To them, any species that has ever threatened a human deserves complete extinction. The Zephyrian Empire tried to negotiate. Admiral Korath sent a direct message to President Carter, bypassing all military channels. President Carter, his message began, we formally request immediate cessation of hostilities. The Zephyrian Empire offers complete withdrawal from human space, full reparations for all damages caused, and a non-aggression treaty lasting 10,000 years. Carter's response was broadcast on every Zephyrian communication frequency in the galaxy. Admiral Korath, your empire came to our world uninvited. You killed 50 million of our people, including children, in your first attack. You awakened something that should have stayed sleeping. Now you must live with the consequences. The second-generation Lazarus subjects began targeting not just military assets, but Zephyrian civilian worlds. What had started as a defensive war was becoming something much darker, a campaign of species-level revenge. Commander Stone was joined by 11 other second-generation subjects. Together, they began a systematic campaign to destroy every world that had supported the invasion of Earth. They didn't just conquer these worlds. They made them uninhabitable for any form of Zephyrian life. Dr. Kevin Phillips, working in his xenobiology laboratory, made a discovery that changed everything. He had been studying Zephyrian psychology for months, analyzing captured specimens and intercepted communications. Dr. Collins, he announced during a research meeting, the Zephyrians aren't just afraid of our weapons. They're afraid of what we're becoming. Their entire species is showing signs of collective trauma syndrome. What does that mean? Their shared consciousness is breaking down. Whole fleets are deserting rather than face human forces. Some worlds are declaring independence from the Empire just to avoid being associated with the attack on Earth. The concept of humanity has become a weapon of mass psychological destruction. Collins studied his data with fascination. You're saying we're not just winning the war, we're destroying their civilization from the inside. Exactly. They're a species that evolved to work together, to think as one. But we've introduced an element of pure terror into their collective mind. It's like a virus spreading through their entire society. The psychological warfare was working better than anyone had hoped. The Zephyrian Empire, which had ruled thousands of worlds for 3 millennia, began to fracture. Entire sectors declared independence. Ancient allies turned against each other. The very structure of their civilization was collapsing under the weight of humanity's revenge. Admiral Korath found himself commanding a fleet that was falling apart. His officers questioned every order, His crews deserted at every opportunity, and his allies had stopped responding to his communications. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported during what would be their final briefing, "we have lost contact with 60% of our fleet. Most ships have either fled the sector or gone into hiding. The homeworld is demanding answers we don't have." Korath looked out at the stars through his bridge windows. Somewhere out there, the human creatures were hunting his people like animals. "How many worlds have we lost to the second-generation subjects?" 17 confirmed dead. All life extinct. Another 34 have been abandoned by their populations out of fear. And the humans continue to evolve? Yes, sir. Intelligence reports suggest they are preparing a third generation. We don't know what capabilities these new creatures will have. Korath closed his 4 eyes in despair. He had lived for 800 years, had conquered dozens of worlds for the Empire, but he had never faced an enemy like this. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were becoming something that made their original form look harmless. On Earth, President Carter stood in her office with Dr. Collins and the military leadership. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire was collapsing faster than anyone had predicted. "The third-generation subjects are ready for deployment," Collins reported. "But I have to warn you, Madam President, these aren't like the others. They don't need our orders. They don't need our approval. Once we release them, they'll make their own decisions about how to hunt our enemies." Carter looked out at the night sky. 50 million humans had died in the first alien attack. Now their sacrifice was being repaid 1,000 times over. "Dr. Collins," she said finally, "humanity spent thousands of years learning to be civilized, to show mercy, to forgive our enemies. The aliens took that choice away from us when they attacked our children." She turned to face the assembled group. "Release the third generation. Let the galaxy learn what happens when you force humanity to evolve." The final phase of human evolution was about to begin. 2 years after the first Zephyrian attack, Admiral Korath stood in the ruins of his flagship's bridge. Through the broken crystal windows, he watched human ships approach through the darkness of space. But these were not the crude metal vessels that had first challenged his fleet. These were living things, beautiful and terrible, their hulls grown rather than built. The humans had evolved beyond the need for technology. Captain Emma Hayes had been the first third-generation Lazarus subject. Her transformation had taken 3 days instead of 6 hours. When she emerged from the medical chamber, she was no longer entirely human. Her body could reshape itself at will, flowing like liquid metal one moment and solid as diamond the next. Emma didn't need a spaceship because she was a spaceship. Her consciousness could spread across multiple forms. Her body could transform into vessels capable of crossing the galaxy in minutes. She could reproduce by splitting herself into smaller versions, creating new forms of human life adapted to survive anywhere in the universe. "Admiral Korath." Emma's voice came from everywhere at once, speaking through the ship's own communication. "Systems, we meet at last." Korath stared at the approaching human vessels with his 4 eyes wide with terror. His once mighty fleet had been reduced to 12 damaged ships. Most of his crew had deserted or gone insane from fear. The Zephyrian Empire was dead, and he was looking at its killers. "What do you want?" he asked, his crystal voice cracking with despair. "We want you to understand what you created," Emma replied. "You came to our world looking for a weak species to conquer. Instead, you found something that could adapt, something that could evolve, something that could become whatever it needed to become to survive." President Helen Carter was no longer entirely human either. The stress of leading humanity, through its transformation, had changed her in ways that Dr. Collins was still studying. Her body was part flesh, part machine, part something else entirely. Her mind could process information from across the galaxy simultaneously. she addressed the remnants of the Zephyrian fleet from her rebuilt office. In Washington, you wanted to see what humanity could become when pushed to its limits. Congratulations, you succeeded beyond your wildest fears. The third-generation subjects had spread across the galaxy like a plague of evolution. They didn't just hunt Zephyrians anymore. They hunted any species that had ever supported the Empire, ever traded with them, ever failed to oppose their invasion. Of Earth. Commander Stone, now leading a collective of second-generation subjects, had begun to see alien species not as enemies, but as resources. Some would be preserved as genetic material for human experiments. Others would be modified to serve as living components in human biotechnology. The rest would be processed as raw materials for the growing human empire. We are no longer the species that was attacked 2 years ago, Stone explained to a group of terrified alien diplomats who had come to beg for mercy. We are something new, something that has learned to see the universe as it really is, a place where only the strongest survive and where mercy is a luxury that extinct species cannot afford. Dr. Amy Collins, now more machine than woman, watched the fourth-generation subjects emerge from their growth chambers. These new humans bore no resemblance to the original species. They were energy beings, creatures of pure thought that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. We've become everything they feared, she observed, speaking to herself and to the quantum consciousness that humanity was developing. We've evolved beyond physical form, beyond individual identity, beyond the need for planets or ships or even bodies. The galaxy had learned a harsh lesson about humanity's greatest strength. It wasn't their courage or their technology, or their stubborn refusal to surrender. It was their ability to adapt, to change, to become whatever they needed to become to ensure their survival. The Zephyrian Empire had collapsed completely. Their homeworld was a museum now, preserved by humans as a reminder of what happened to species that threatened Earth. The surviving Zephyrians lived as refugees on the edges of known space, carrying warnings that would echo through the universe for millions of years. Do not wake the humans, their messages said. Do not give them a reason to change. Because when humanity evolves, they don't just become stronger. They become something that makes their previous form look like a pleasant memory. Captain Emma Hayes materialized on Admiral Korith's bridge, her form shifting between human and something far more alien. She looked at the defeated Zephyrian with eyes that held the collective memory of 50 million human deaths. Your species ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years, she said softly. You conquered hundreds of worlds, enslaved millions of beings, destroyed countless civilizations. You thought you were the apex predators of the universe. Korith fell to his knees, his crystal body shaking with fear. Please, we were wrong. We understand that now. Spare what remains of my people. Emma tilted her head, considering his request. Around them, the bridge began to change as her presence infected the ship's systems. The crystal walls started to pulse with organic rhythms, turning the Zephyrian vessel into something alive. We will spare some of your people, she said finally. Not out of mercy, but because we need them. They will serve as a reminder to the galaxy of what happens when you threaten humanity. They will tell the story of how a peaceful species was forced to become something terrible. The human empire expanded across the galaxy like a force of nature. Worlds that had never heard of Earth suddenly found themselves hosting human colonies. Species that had existed for millions of years discovered they were now subjects of beings who had learned to reshape reality itself. Dr. Kevin Phillips, his consciousness now distributed across a network of research stations, studied the psychological impact of humanity's transformation on the galactic community. His findings were disturbing even by human standards. We've broken their understanding of how evolution works, he reported to the collective human consciousness. Most species evolve slowly over millions of years. We evolved from victims to gods in 2 years. It shattered their basic assumptions about how the universe operates. The 5th-generation subjects didn't even resemble life as other species understood it. They were ideas given form, concepts that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. They existed in the spaces between dimensions and the gaps between thoughts, in the quantum foam that underlied all existence. President Carter, now, existing as both an individual and part of the greater human consciousness, looked out at a universe that was rapidly being reshaped by her species' will. We tried to be peaceful, she reflected, her thoughts reaching across space to touch the minds of every human in existence. We tried to coexist, to share the galaxy with other species. They forced us to become something else. Admiral Korath spent his final days writing a report that would become the most important document in galactic history. It was a warning, a confession, and an apology all combined into one desperate message. We encountered a species on a small blue world, he wrote. They called themselves humans. They seemed weak, divided, chaotic. We thought they would be easy to conquer. We were wrong about everything. Humans are not weak. They are adaptable. They are not divided when threatened. They become unified in ways that transcend individual identity. They are not chaotic. They are unpredictable, which makes them impossible to defeat using conventional strategies. We killed 50 million of them in our first attack. We thought this would break their spirit. Instead, it broke something else. It broke the restraints that kept them from becoming what they truly are, the ultimate survivors. If any species receives this message, remember this: humans are most dangerous when they have nothing left to lose. When you threaten their families, their worlds, their way of life, they don't just fight back. They evolve into something capable of ensuring that no one can ever threaten them again. We unleashed hell when we attacked Earth, but hell was nothing compared to what humanity became in response. They became our nightmare. They became everyone's nightmare. And now they are the future. In the Sol system, now the heart of an empire that spanned the galaxy, humanity looked out at the stars with new eyes. They had become something beyond their wildest dreams and their worst fears. They were no longer the species that had been. Attacked 2 years ago, they were something new, something unprecedented, something that would shape the universe for eons to come. The age of humanity had begun.